judging by the hands, though, I feel like even though the matchup might be favored for Lifecoach, Savjz definitely has the better opening hand with double Armor Smith, Cruel Taskmaster, and Acolyte. Those could all be potential keeps. Meanwhile, Lifecoach, he has the Shade of Naxxramas that's okay, I guess, but he also has a Kazam Mystic in his deck. Even though he almost certainly will not keep the Kazam Mystic, it's a card that if Lifecoach ever draws it, he's going to be just one step behind Savjz because of how unimportant and how unimpactful that Kazam Mystic is.
He's even got a copy of Nourish in here, and this is something that we've seen him play a lot in the past too. It's just he likes to play these one-of-unique cards in Druid that he feels like gives him a certain edge in matchups. So when I actually see Azure Drake and Nourish in here, that's also starting to change my opinion a little bit of this, because he's got a Kazan Mystic. Is it Kazan or is it Kizan? I don't know which one it is.
I am not sure at all.
Right,
I think it's Kazan.
Okay, we'll say Kazan. Kazan Mystic. Well, he's got a copy of that in there. It is bad, but he's also got a copy of Nourish in here, which is also really bad for Warrior. It's like he's got cards that kind of go both ways. It's like this one's good against this one's bad against this one, and so forth. And talking about the hand specifically, I think it was the ESL, Reynad said against aggro, if Warrior draws 2 Armor Smiths, they have like this astronomical win rate in positions like that. And I've noticed that that's the case a lot when they just draw 2 Armor Smiths very early in general. And I'm curious how much of an impact it actually has against Druid, though, because a lot of the minions that Lifecoach is going to be playing is stuff like Azure Drake, Druid of the Claw, etc. And those are Armor Smith's going to die to those in one shot. I wonder if it's just still the same thing in these matchups.
I think the normally Armor Smith isn't that great against Druid, but because Savjz has the Cruel Taskmaster in addition to the Armor Smiths in his hand, he'll be able to activate his Armor Smiths a bit more and basically use them just as 3 damage and 3 damage each and every turn. I want to also point out that Savjz, when Lifecoach hero powder on turn 2, Savjz had just the biggest grin on his face because he knows having Druid having wild growth versus not having wild growth is pretty much one of the biggest deciders in this matchup, if not in any Druid matchup.
Lifecoach chose to make mana crystals here off of this Nourish, and I can't blame him for that. But I think that with his hand, I would have liked to see that be dedicated to card draw. He's going to have to draw so much gas to make a big use out of it. He does have Azure Drake and he does have Dr. Boom, so I can definitely justify doing it. Oh, and he draws Wild Growth. That's got to be the worst draw in his deck right now.
Yeah, almost certainly. Azure Drake could certainly come down, and now Lifecoach is also deciding what he wants to attack into, if he wants to reveal his shade at all. I think Lifecoach, just judging by his hand, he went for the mana crystals with Nourish because he wants to get that Dr. Boom as fast as possible.
Yeah.
If Dr. Boom comes out on turn 7, it's just slightly less likely for Savjz to have an answer like Execute, Shield Slam, or BGH.
Right. He's looking for a high mana utilization throughout the course of this game. I like the Shade Unveil here to start doing some work. And I imagine this axe is going to be direct. I'm a little bit surprised that he chose to go with Armor Smith here. I feel like when I'm looking at the hand again, I feel like Sludge Belcher might have just been a better play. Because if he played Sludge Belcher and his opponent's got a 4-3 and a 4-4, how do they run their guy in? I mean, I guess he's in fear of swipe, but your opponent just used Innervate and Nourish, and they didn't draw cards. They made mana crystals. So they have 4 cards that have swipe, and even if they swipe in a position like this, what ends up happening is they run over your token with one of their guys, and then the following turn, you have Fiery War Axe and Cruel Taskmaster to clean the board up afterwards.
I think it's just more that the gut call is if a shade is on the board and it's revealed and you can get rid of it, you want to get rid of it as fast as possible. And that just might be a gut reaction from Savjz. I would have to think Dr. Boom is the play right here. Even though it gets kind of contested with the Armor Smith, if you don't play Dr. Boom now, when are you going to play it other than on turn 7, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is just the turn 4. He doesn't really need the options at this point. He's got Swipe and he's got Ancient Allure. Dr. Boom's giving him plenty of options. Another poor draw for Savjz. He's drawn Grommash, he's drawn Harrison, he's drawn Dr. Boom, he's drawn Alex Straza. The situation's looking pretty rough right now.
Quite rare for the Warrior player not to draw any of his removals by turn 5 even. The Sludge Belcher will allow him to tank some damage from the Dr. Boom.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is still alright, I guess. It gives Savjz at least one more turn to take care of the Dr. Boom. And wow, Yeah,
That
we
is
talked about Pilot Sky Golem being a card in Paladin against Warrior, but it's also a card against a card in Druid against Warrior as well. I mean,
Yeah.
Lifecoach has shown his proclivity to adding these random, well, quote unquote, random Pilot Sky Golems in his decks, and I guess it's going to pay off right now.
Yes, Cairn used to be a really viable threat in these kinds of decks. And the reason wasn't because Cairn was so good, it was because Cairn was so annoying and difficult to deal with. And that's sort of the situation we're seeing with it right here, is that it's in this deck, and the biggest problem with it is that it's just kind of annoying to deal with. He doesn't want to have to kill this off or really make an effort to do anything about it, but he's going to have to. And it's not even just like Cairn. Cairn has 4 attack, so you can at times ignore it because 4 is not that much, but a 50% increase in power with Pilot of Sky Golem. This minion cannot be ignored for more than maybe 1 turn at a time.
Well, Savjz, he might be going, okay, just plain Dr. Boom, I guess. Why not?
Yeah,
Turn
really,
6.
Not really many other
Play
options.
Dr. Boom.
Oh, geez.
Exactly.
This hand is getting scarier and scarier for Lifecoach right now. So Dr. Boom's got a pretty even trade into a 7-4 into the 7-7. Where does the rest of this go, though? I feel like Ancient Lore is definitely happening this turn.
Well, Lifecoach has to be careful of the sequencing, though. He knows the boom bots will get some value here, but he has to kind of allocate the boom bots in as nice of a way as possible. Does he want the boom bots to potentially hit the Ancient of Lore? Does he even keep the boom bots up in the next turn? And how does he deal with his opponent's Dr. Boom? We can see in Savjz's hand, he actually has an Alexstrasza, so if all these minions get left on the board, the game could maybe swing around.
Yeah, it's gonna be really tough. We saw Lifecoach yesterday. He was taking actually some risks against boombots. He would very often attack a boombot with a 4 health minion on the board before he get attacked with it, because his goal seemed like it was to try to trade into his opponent's minions with minions that had been hit by boombots. So in a situation like this,
huge.
yeah, like this boombot, even if it hits a Pilot Sky Golem, it's got to go for 4, and 2 is not going to be enough right now. So there is some counterplay here for Savjz. This is like one opening turn that maybe he has to take control of the game, but frankly, he just doesn't have a strong option in his hand to really make big use of it. Deathspite, I think, is just about one of the best cards he could have drawn.
It allows him to almost clear the board. We have to see what comes out of the Pilot Sky Golem, though. And there could be a lot of good pop-outs, like the Water Elemental, the Pit Lord, and whoa, that's actually might be the best one for Savjz.
Oh my gosh, that
Lifecoach,
is
rather
devastating right now. 10 points of damage. Now, granted, it is going to have a 50% chance to attack random targets, but that is about one of the worst ones Savjz could have seen.
I think this exact situation actually happened to Savjz in a previous tournament. Savjz was playing Warrior in the Inven Invitational, I believe, and he attacked his opponent's Piloted Sky Golem. This exact card, the Dunmal Shaman, came out, and it just did 10 points of damage to Savjz's face. I mentioned cards that Savjz didn't want to pop out of this Shredder, or this Piloted Sky Golem. Those cards were like Wild Elemental and Pit Lord, but this might be even better than both of those.
Yeah. You know, there is a chance he has lethal this turn, by the way. If he casts Savage Roar, that's 14 points of damage, potentially, from this Dunewall Shaman. So if both of those hit face, and like neither of the 50% chances happen, he just kills him after that. This is probably just a safer play, is to just go ahead and swipe and then deal your 10 damage. But if Lifecoach wanted to go for it, there was a chance that he had lethal this turn.
I think Lifecoach is definitely a player who doesn't want to take risks, especially in this situation, though.
Yeah, he's so far ahead right now. It's just so brutal. Savjz does not pick up. He needs to get out of this, and this looks like it's just lethal to me. No matter what.
Yeah, Savjz is going to play the Ragnaros, even if it hits the Shaman, then a Savage Roar or just a Keeper of the Grove to face might be able to take it.
Yeah, the Ragnaros is gonna miss though. And so Lifecoach just gonna run 5 to face. No 50% activation happens. He's gonna take a quick 1-0 lead in this one. And not a big surprise. Druid is gonna be one of those matchups that's just really tough for Warrior. I think if Lifecoach is gonna win with Druid, that this is like probably the easiest way that that's gonna happen. So I think Lifecoach is happy to see that, but I don't think Savjz is like disappointed that his warrior lost to Druid. I think it's like the matchup he was trying to avoid, and the fact that he ran into it it ends up giving Lifecoach a 1-0 lead.
Yeah, I think Lifecoach is especially happy that his Druid got a win, because from his lineup, we can see that Druid was the 4th submitted deck, and he did not even bring Druid to the tournament in the best of 5 format. So Lifecoach definitely, what that tells me is that Lifecoach thinks that Druid is his weakest deck, and Druid getting a win, even though it's the weakest deck, Lifecoach is certainly going to be not too sad about that, I guess.
Yeah, I would have to say so. I mean, it's, you don't want to start out your day with a loss, but again, you can't be blaming yourself for that one. That is such a tough matchup to win, especially when you see Lifecoach have an Innervate Nourish on turn 3 for Mana Crystals, and then actually his pan out was like Dr. Boom, Ancient Allure, Piloted Sky Golem. He just had everything he needed the whole step of the way. So he took a little bit of a risk, I think, in nourishing for Mana Crystals, but when you see the Piloted Sky Golem, I would guess that means that his deck is just kind of top-end heavy, which seems to be a trend for Lifecoach. He likes top-end heavy decks. So I think that I probably could have caught that in the beginning, but just something I didn't really think about. So where does he go from here, though? Because Savjz still has his Warrior deck, and Lifecoach is... I still think it's very likely that he's going to go with Warlock here. Is Savjz going to lead with Warrior again? Does he just keep playing it until he picks up a win with it? He's got to win with it eventually if he's going to win the series.
Oh, when you see the Rogue from Savjz, and I actually believe that Lifecoach again has a favorable matchup.
Yeah.
Rogues, if they don't run stuff like Sabotage, then it's going to be really hard to deal with Giants coming from Lifecoach. We saw that back in the previous Miracle Rogue days, where Handlock was kind of one of the counters to Miracle Rogue, and Miracle Rogue, I feel, has weakened since then, or just the Rogue class has become weaker, while the Handlock has gotten a few buffs with the anti-kill bots.
There is something else I want to point out, though, is that this matchup is a lot less, I feel like, about burst damage and a lot more about ability to control the board. So something like before, you always had to invest multiple cards into killing a giant, but now something like a Tinker Sharpsword Oil, I feel like you can pay a bunch of life to do something, but you're accomplishing a lot more and you're gaining a lot more ground. And I feel like it's more overall pressure that's put on Handlock from a board presence perspective than it was when it was just pure Miracle Rogue and their goal was to get Gadgetzan Auctioneer concealed.
Lifecoach's hand, not the greatest. He does pick up the Twilight Drake, so he has at least something for turn 4. Savjz's hand, with 1 or 2 extra draws, it could look really good, but right now, as we've mentioned before, Rogue is a deck that has a lot of minions and a lot of spells, and to be really effective, you need 50% of you need to draw both your spells and your minions, and to use them in a great combination.
Yep. Just gonna be turn 3 Twilight Drake. 4/8 I think is enough for now, but again, Savjz's hand it's not bad. I mean, he's gonna be able to put up a pretty good argument, I think, here for fending off what's going on. If he doesn't play too carefully, these 2 Molten Giants may be a little bit more effective than he was hoping for. But with a Tinker Sharpsword Oil in hand, again, it's not the hardest thing in the world to clear out some minions if you get that active. It's like it turns your hero power into basically an Assassin's Blade. And I don't know if you recall too much, but Assassin's Blade was like one of the key cards for old Miracle Rogue decks to actually beat Handlock, was because you needed to throw a poison on the Assassin's Blade and start actually attacking minions. And you would always fall really low, but if Handlock didn't have the reach to beat you, that was basically one of the ways that you control the board.
Yeah, and Handlock these days, they don't have a lot of reach anymore compared to the olden days where Leroy, Power Overwhelming, Faceless was definitely one of the biggest threats. Lifecoach actually coined out a Twilight Drake without having his second one in hand, but he draws a Twilight Drake right now, and it seems like the perfect time to play it, but I think Lifecoach right now is also considering how threatening this Violet Teacher is. You know, one of the reasons Moral Quill is in this deck is to deal with a lot of 5 mana, or rather 5 health creatures. I was talking to Kalento one time, and I asked him, why do you actually play Moral Quill in Handlock? And his answer had more to do with, I don't actually want to kill 1 HP creatures. It's more the fact that Twilight Drake is such a common turn 4 play, and Sludge Belcher is such a common turn 5 play, that I want to use the Moral Quills actually to clear Sludge Belchers with my Twilight Drakes, and that was just such forward thinking.
Wow, Mountain Giant gets picked up for Lifecoach right on curve as well. But still sort of the same problem. I mean, he is looking down, he's staring at this Violet Teacher going, how do I actually deal with this? He can't Mortal Coil and Mountain Giant this turn, but I can guarantee you he really wants to get this Mountain Giant down. I imagine he's going to forego killing the Violet Teacher again this turn. And a lot of that's going to be founded in the fact that Savjz played turn 5 Azure Drake and didn't have a spell.
Yes, Savjz, he does have some combination of minions and spells, but what he really needs right now is a preparation. Preparation, it makes all these low or high mana cards in his hand really playable. And if you draw something like Preparation and Blade Flurry, it's exactly what he needs to clear the eventually huge board that Lifecoach will certainly get with double Twilight Drake and a Mountain Giant.
Yeah. This is actually a really tough turn. He's got to make a decision really quick, though.
Does he bring his first Twilight Drake in dagger range, or does he... Okay, so he's going to attack with both, I'm assuming here, and he's going to forgo developing the Mountain Giant.
Yeah, so this is going to be taunt him ups.
I think he might even... Oh.
He didn't taunt him up.
Yeah. He's just so weak to Blade Flurry right now that I guess taunting him up would put him even weaker to Blade Flurry.
Yeah.
Well, at least Savjz gets a really nice Edwin Van Cleef here, and we see no Owl from Lifecoach and no Siphon Soul. Just judging from Lifecoach's previous Warlock games, his previous Handlock games, he might not even be running 2 Siphon Souls. In fact, I'm not even sure if we've seen even one.
Yeah, I know we did see a Siphon Soul yesterday at some point, but I would tend to think that if there's going to be a player who cuts a Siphon Soul, that Lifecoach is going to be one of them. At 6 mana, he likes extremely powerful cards, and if he has Siphon Soul in here, I think it's more of like this is a necessity in certain situations, and that's why I'm running it, rather than like his go-to turn 6 and turn 7 styles of play. He's going to tend to favor... I mean, if you just look at the way his decks are built, Piloted Sky Golem seems to be like one of his favorite cards to put in these decks, and a card like Siphon Soul does not answer Piloted Sky Golem very well. And I think that sort of mentality is kind of playing into effect when he's kind of making his deck choices. So Mountain Giant available here. He can play Sunfury Protector with that. He could also play Sludge Belcher, and he could play Sylvanas, and all 3 of these lines are very different.
Yeah, it'll take a great mind like Lifecoach's, who's very experienced with Handlock, to decide what is the best. He's hovering over the Mountain Giant, but after he uses Mountain Giant, the only thing he can play out of his hand is the Sunfury Protector.
Let's go ahead and taunt him up. This would be a great Black Knight turn if you had it. Blade Flurry gets drawn.
Blade Flurry?
Not quite enough to get things done.
Yeah, again, Preparation
like
would do really well for this hand right now.
Yeah, I'm feeling like this is a sprint turn.
And there it is. If he draws Preparation, he might be able to do something. Preparation and something like a Sap, maybe?
Backstab's not bad. Yeah, I think that's about one of his better draws, I think. So the first Giant down, 2 Twilight Drakes are down. So what threats does Savjz have to account for now? He has to account for all the little stuff like Sludge Belchers, Anti-Heal Bots, Defenders of Argus, Sunfury Protectors, Molten Giants, and Sylvanas. But we've seen Lifecoach play all kinds of threats in Handlock in the past. I don't think he has a Jiraxxus in here, based on what we've seen, because we saw this deck go really deep. What other threats did he have in his deck? Did he have like a Ragnaros? Did he have a Dr. I know he had Dr. Boom.
He had Dr. Boom and Ragnaros as 2 of his remaining threats. So as for the big threats, it's Ragnaros, Dr. Boom, 2 Moltens, and 1 Mountain remaining.
Oh, and a Lotheb.
And yeah, I guess Lotheb can kind of count as a minor threat, especially against Rogue.
Would you be surprised if he played Lotheb here?
Not at all. I think Lotheb, if you play Lotheb, I think it's almost guaranteed to stick on the board next turn, and it contests with pretty much every minion that Savjz could play on the next turn really well.
That's what he's going to be thinking about, is how everything pans out. He has done an 18 also, so some consideration for life total. I don't mind.
Sludge Belcher is a bit interesting.
I don't mind the Sludge Belcher here, because something that can happen is if Savjz sets up a turn where he anticipates being able to use spells after that and it gets disrupted by Lotheb, I feel like that's going to have a much higher impact potentially on this game. And when he plays Sludge Belcher here, I think that's what he's hunting for, is he's looking for a big disruption turn.
What Sludge Belcher does mean, though, is that Savjz will be able to counter Lotheb on Lifecoach, and he might get somewhat of a free trade. He is considering, he was hovering over the Earthring Farseer, but if he plays that, it gives Sludge Belcher a free trade as well. Besides the Earthring Farseer, though, he would have to either set up a dagger or Fan of Knives to complete his turn if he plays Lotheb.
I'd like to see him set up a dagger.
Neither of them are great.
I'd like to see him set up a dagger because he's got 2 sharp sword oils in his hand.
Yeah, I agree. Not only does he have 2 sharp sword oils, but he also has a blade flurry. So just preparing for the next turn would be great. And again, as we talk about preparation is always a great draw this late in the game, where you have all these spells and just not enough mana to play them.
Yep. So that's something he's certainly hunting for. Lifecoach picks up probably the worst card in his deck right now.
Yeah, when you're facing Handlock, it can be really scary when you see them have 10 or so cards. But oftentimes, a lot of these cards are fairly situational and just certainly unplayable. Zombie Chow is a great example. Hellfire, very situational card indeed. The Anti-Healbot, another situational card, and 2 Molten Giants. Quite unfortunate for Lifecoach too, because he drew both of those Molten Giants in his opening hand.
Yeah, that's really it's mucking up his draw quite a bit. I mean, despite that, he did have Twilight Drake start, so that's about the best he could have hoped for. This turn is looking really rough though. Like I don't feel like any of these are very comfortable plays. If you play something like Sylvanas, there's such a high likelihood that Savjz is down sat by this point. But if you play something like Lotheb, it's not really doing too much because Savjz can just run over the Sludge Belcher kind of as he pleases. And then Lifecoach is still in the same position. Like, what do I do in the turn after that? I think Lotheb is just like his least bad play.
Yeah, normally I think Lotheb would be a great play against Rogue, but this is just all right, I guess. It doesn't stop the Lotheb from his opponent's Lotheb from running over the Sludge Belcher, but it does stop a lot of just great plays from the Rogue, such as some combos with the Tinker's Sharpsword Oil. So this kind of still puts a thorn in Savjz's next turn, and then Lifecoach will be able to play spells on the next turn because his opponent's Lotheb effect will not still be in effect.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think this is the kind of turn that Lifecoach is looking for, but this Lotheb I think came down as a necessity to oppose Lotheb rather than like a big disruption thing. So I like Savjz holding on to the poison here too. When he's got the 2 oils in his hand, this is a potentially extremely large Blade Flurry. I mean, he might actually just have lethal next turn. Now that I'm looking at it, he can backstab the 1/2, and then just throw 2 oils and Blade Flurry.
Yeah, again, especially if he draws preparation. Preparation this late into the game just changes everything. When you can prepare a 1-mana Tinker's Sharpsword Oil, a Lifecoach, he has to be considering a few cards from Savjz right now: the Tinker's Sharpsword Oil, the Blade Flurry, and the Sap. I think those are the 3 most important cards to play around at this moment. And now that Lifecoach doesn't have the Lotheb, he can't contest those particular plays. So he has to set up his board in a way that is least vulnerable to all those spells. So that probably means setting up at least 2 big taunts to play around Sap, and setting up enough HP on the board that you kind of play around the Sharp Sword Blade Flurry turn as well.
Yeah, I feel like playing around Blade Flurry is going to be extremely difficult for him in this turn. So there's the 2 taunts. I think that when Savjz plays a dagger and doesn't attack the 1/2 here, it's a really big signal that that's what he's looking for, is something just like that.
One other way to play around the Sharp Sword Oil is just to clear the board, and this does a pretty good job. But he's still going to get Savjz is still going to get a lot of Blade Flurry value.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to be a Violet Teacher. Yeah, this looks like a really strong Violet Teacher, Fan of Knives, Blade Flurry turn.
Yeah, it's looking like it to me as well. With that play, he doesn't even have to play the preparation, which gives him more potential for burst in the future turns.
You know, there's also a chance that he just doesn't Fan of Knives. Although I believe it's really low, there is a chance that he doesn't.
One other issue is if he Blade Flurries right now, he's essentially giving his opponent 1-mana Molten Giants. How relevant is that though?
It's actually, now that you mention it, I think it's really relevant. I think I'd like to see him not Blade Flurry when you kind of put it that way. We're going to see that. I know Fan of Knives is for sure happening. This is the one we know. The question I think Savjz is asking himself is how important is it to backstab here instead?
Backstabbing gets rid of one more taunt.
Well, if he's just going to Fanonize, he might put it into the Defender of Argus instead. Yeah, so he's just going to Fanonize this turn. He's not going to be using Blade Flurry. He's still hunting for like a really big Blade Flurry blowout.
There we go. And what does he get? Probably something like a South Sea.
Oh, that's actually really good right now.
The issue here is that Violet Teacher is now on the board, and it has the possibility to just really mess up some of your Tinker Sharpsword Oil turns.
Mind you, if basically the way that Lifecoach can defend against this right now is 2 big taunts. So if he plays 2 big taunts, that means the Violet Teacher can actually suicide itself. And so can the rest of the tokens. So after that, he can play South Sea Deckhand, he can load up his 2 oils, he can Blade Flurry afterwards to clear the entire board, and then run the giant South Sea Deckhand in. I think this is like really close to lethal for Savjz right now. And if Lifecoach doesn't tread extremely lightly this turn, I think you're going to see it end.
No, there's actually no Sun Fury and no Defender of Argus in Lifecoach's hand, so he can't even actually get up these really huge taunts. If he got something up like 2 Molten Giants and a Sun Fury, then Savjz might have trouble dealing with it. But yeah, without the Lotheb to contest the spells of Savjz, I'm not sure if there's actually a way for Lifecoach to not get his board cleared the next turn.
Yeah, I mean, he could do something like Anti-Keelbot and Sludge Belcher, but I'm curious if that actually... So he's at 22. He's going to take 3. He's going to take 9 from Blade Flurry, and then he would take 2, 5, and he'd take 7, no, 8 from the... Savjz has got 17 damage next turn with South Sea Deckhand and the 2 oils. So if this isn't Anti-Keelbot here, I think this game's over. Yeah, so there's the Anti-Keelbot, so he's at 19 now. And, whoa, my gosh, that's going to be lethal. Savjz has an attack with Dagger and the Blade Flurry afterwards. Wow, that South Sea Deckhand was such an important draw. I cannot stress how important of a draw that was. And Lifecoach, you can just see he's absolutely upset with that. It's just so much damage. This is exactly what this deck is trying to do. So Savjz doing an excellent job of controlling the board early despite 2 Twilight Drakes and a Mountain Giant. Wow, look at how much damage that is.
Wow, 7 overkill. I guess this is the new Leroy Jenkins Shadow Step. South Sea Deckhand plus oil, preparation oil, plus when you have a dagger and the deadly poison equipped, that's just way too much for Lifecoach to deal with. And Savjz played that perfectly. He contested all of Lifecoach's early game threats, and he drew Sprint at the exact right time. He drew all his minions, he drew all his spells, put them together in a finishing blow. And again, every time we see Rogue winning a game, it's when they have 0 cards in hand. And I feel like this is exactly what Rogue is designed to do. Unleash your entire hand at a very specific point where your opponent can't deal with it. And then we're seeing the power of preparation there, especially, I feel.
Yeah, one of the big points that's coming into this one, too, is that Savjz, I don't think on like a turn-by-turn basis, was playing as efficiently as he possibly could. But the reason for that was because he was hunting for a big lethal turn. He wasn't trying to just grind out Lifecoach from the game. He was looking to control the board enough that it would do basically exactly what happened, which is kind of trap Lifecoach into making a play pretty much like he did, like a Molten Giant Anti-Keelbot without a big taunt in play, or just set up one taunt and really have to move forward from there and having big burst to go through either side of it. Like that was clearly what he was hunting for multiple turns. And it was just finally Lifecoach ran out of all of the options he needed to be able to set up against that. And I don't even know what it would have required, because a 9-point Blade Flurry is basically going to kill anything that Handlock can do. So I'm not even sure that there is, once it got to that point in the game and Savjz had controlled through 2 Twilight Drakes and a Mountain Giant, that there was anything he could have done to even realistically fight back against that.
Yeah, even if Lifecoach set up a really huge taunt, we saw that Savjz did draw at least one of his 2 saps in that final turn. So even if taunts came into play, then that wouldn't have prevented Lifecoach from lethal either, because yeah, sap plus that big Blade Flurry just kills you no matter what.
Yeah, so 1-1 now for Savjz. His Rogue's going to become locked. And Lifecoach has still got Warlock. I feel like he's going to go with Warlock again. Like, I feel like he just wants a revenge game at this point. He was visibly upset with Savjz's hand towards the end of the game. Mm-hmm. I don't really think you could be, though. It was like he was playing in such a peculiar way and wasn't really doing anything that it felt like his hand was very close to pretty much exactly what it was. I think the South Sea Deckhand is what he was really upset about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just you're always really upset about a minion that goes haha and kills you, I guess. Yeah, you can't see it right now, but Lifecoach, after the game, he just got up and he was touching his head and he was doing very life coach things. He probably looked more upset than any player I've ever seen. Even Savjz, a player who is known to get very upset after losses.
Yeah, actually, just got up away from his computer and just walked away too. Something else I can see. He rage quit, guys. Sorry.
After a game like that, I think sometimes you just have to take a breather, just walk around a few times and compose yourself.
Definitely want to keep on an even keel. I mean, especially when you suffer the 7 points of overkill as a result of Savjz deckhand. Savjz deckhand. Who would have thought? Like, of all the cards, I remember when I first started playing Hearthstone, I was reading through all these one drops. I was like, Savjz deckhand seems alright if you have weapons. And then the more I just kept playing the game, I was like, what is this card supposed to do? And then the first time that I saw someone like double cold-blooded, I was like, oh, that's what you're supposed to do with them. That's a lot of damage. That makes more sense.
Yeah, we saw it. It was one of the most important cards in the infamous Backspace Rogue back in the day. And even Firebat used it to great success in a Miracle Rogue after Leroy was nerfed. And we're going to get to Game 3, actually, and it's going to be Lifecoach being very stubborn and picking Handlock yet again.
I don't really know if this is stubbornness. I think he's supposed to go with Handlock here. It's a really good comfort pick. He played it excellently the last game. I just think that with the way it rolled out, Savjz ended up having the advantage because of the draws. Again, just being able to control the early pressure is really what Rogue is looking to do, because its endgame is so much better than pretty much every other deck's endgame if it gets to that point.
Yes, Savjz, he picks Druid against Handlock, and it's actually looking to be a fairly similar... Druid kind of has a fairly similar plan to the Rogue in that all it wants to do is build up a board and stabilize against Handlock. Then it aims to burst Handlock out of the game with Force of Nature Savage Roar, which is a lot similar to that Southsea Deckhand Tinker's Sharp Sword Roll combo.
Yeah, what do you think about Innervating Shade here? Obviously, he's got two very different one-drops at this point, and Innervate, I know, is an extremely key card in this matchup, not necessarily for its potential to put a lot of presence on the board, but more so for its ability to give you swing turns when your opponent is having these major power turns in the mid stages of the game. Like, are you looking for power turns early? Because it's pretty tough to just close out a game versus Handlock, but it's also tough to keep up with the pace of them when you're kind of playing fair for the first couple of turns, and then they're playing turn 4 Mountain Giants and Twilight Drakes and things like that.
I think Savjz, he's the one reason to save the Innervate is he could draw potentially something like Azure Drake or Ancient of Lore in later turns, but one reason to use the Innervate right now is that if you play the Shade early, it's out of range of Hellfire, and just losing a Shade to Hellfire is not too great, especially because Hellfire is generally not too useful in this matchup.
So back-to-back Mortal Coils get drawn. Yeah, that's not going to be much help. And Savjz actually not going to play Zombie Chow here. This is going to Hero Power, so making sure that he gets every point of everything available. I don't think the damage on Zombie Chow is too important right now. I don't think he's really concerned with it. And so this turn, I imagine you're going to see Zombie Chow and Hero Power again, but just making sure that he gets every single point. Something else that it looks like he's kind of setting up for here is anticipating that he's going to have to use his life to deal like 1 point of damage to a giant at some point, or to like a Twilight Drake, and he doesn't want it to be too much of an impact overall on his life total. So getting every point of armor, I think, is actually pretty important here and very relevant.
Yeah, turn 4 for the Handlock was a key turn. Unfortunately, that Twilight Drake was just one turn too late, and it's going to cost Lifecoach a lot of tempo.
Yeah. Now, something that Savjz has an option here for is to coin out this Druid of the Claw, and I think he's going to take that option.
Unfortunately, if he takes that option, then he will be vulnerable to that Twilight Drake, which means he can't basically silence the Twilight Drake and Hero Power it on turn 5.
Yeah, that was what I was just about to mention too, was that you want a really clean way to kill this Twilight Drake so it doesn't deal too much damage. And when you're playing Druid of the Claw here in Taunt, you don't really have an efficient way to do that. Now, that being said, turn 5 is going to be a more mana-efficient turn for Lifecoach to just drop something like Sludge Belcher. And when Lifecoach plays Sludge Belcher here, Druid of the Claw is far superior of a play. And I think that's what his read is Lifecoach actually didn't play a Twilight Drake on turn 4. So Lifecoach is going, so Savjz is going, you know what? He doesn't have Twilight Drake. I don't need this coin in the clean kill with Keeper of the Grove. I'll save this for maybe something like Sylvanas or a Twilight Drake in the future, and I'll go from there. So the Druid of the Claw is meant to contest Sludge Belchers right now, and it just so happened to be that Lifecoach's last draw, the last turn, was Twilight Drake. So I think I still think it's the play here.
Yeah, Savjz's line of play was basically better in all aspects, except for if Lifecoach drew the Twilight Drake within his last 2 cards. So definitely just playing the odds here, and I think that was certainly not a misplay at all.
Well, he also has to choose to play Twilight Drake, and again, this is what I thought had a good chance to happen, was him forego playing Twilight Drake because Sludge Belcher is more mana efficient.
Oh wow, even the big game Hunter.
That's a really important draw right now.
Yeah, this is looking actually really great for Savjz right now. Lifecoach couldn't play Twilight Drakes or Mountain Giants early, and now Savjz has both answers to answers to both those cards. And not only does he have answers, he also has the card draw from the Ancient of Lore. I always say that in order to beat Handlock, you need basically 2 things. You need answers to their big threats, like basically Twilight Drake and Mountain Giant. But I think actually more importantly, you need the card draw. And we're seeing actually when Handlock was a lot more popular, players began adding not BGHs to their decks to handle the threat of Handlock. They began actually adding Azure Drakes to draw more cards in order to keep up with Handlock in the mid game.
Yeah, so Silent's going to be coming out on this Sylvanas right here. I'm curious if he's going to run his Shade into Sylvanas or not. I think I'd like to see him hold it. Yeah, that's exactly what he's going to do. I think that's a fantastic play to hang on to that Shade. He knows the value that that's going to provide later in the game. If he doesn't see something like Shadow, we actually haven't seen Shadow Flame, I think, in Lifecoach's deck so far.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like, imagine if that Hellfire were a Shadow Flame. How much would this game turn around right now?
It certainly would be a much bigger difference, but I'm not sure if it would be all of the pressure in the world. I mean, using Mountain Giant and Shadow Flame to clear this board position, I think he's definitely happy with that because he keeps a 5/5 on the board. But that's like really strange now. I don't think we've seen a Shadow Flame the entire tournament from it.
Yeah, we've seen just so many threats in Lifecoach's deck, like the Dr. Boom and the Ragnaros. We've also seen double Anti-Keelbot, double Mortal Coil, and possibly at least 1 Zombie Chow. So there has to be cut somewhere. We also see double Defender of Argus. So definitely there's going to be a lot of cards that are either cut or that are one-ofs.
Yeah, so here's going to be a big game Hunter, very likely, I think, on this Giant. And this is another interesting spot, is how he chooses to clear this, because this might be a turn where he's going to keep Shade, I think, for 1 more turn. Yeah, I'm just going to continue to play it slow, and I like that here because he's not facing pressure really. He doesn't feel like he has to do anything to actually beat Lifecoach at this point. His scaling actually might just be better than Lifecoach's right now. He has Scenarius, he has Ancient of Lore. If the board turns into a process where it's building tension, he has a growing Shade and a mind control tech plus a swipe. I think he's got all the tools again to beat Lifecoach in the late game.
Yeah, exactly. Even like some of Lifecoach's best threats, like the Dr. Boom, what get kind of countered by the mind control tech. A combination of that and the swipe, plus the Shade is now an 8/8. The next turn it will grow into a 9/9, which is pretty much unkillable, almost unkillable for a Handlock player. You no longer have plays like Mountain Giant or Molten Giant Shadow Flame to even contest the Shade. So I think it's going to be only a matter of time before Savjz can draw that Force of Nature Savage Roar, and in combination with that Shade, it's just an instant win.
He's actually, if this board goes uncontested next turn and Savjz draws Innervate, he's got 21 points of damage with Scenarius.
That's great.
Yeah, Sludge Belcher going to be the play here. So Scenarius not going to be lethal this turn, and Lifecoach definitely wants to keep this board under control, so going to be making a contribution towards that. I think I just like Ancient Allure here, but I definitely see some merits to Sylvanas.
One of the best parts about Sylvanas is that you can fit a hero power in.
Yep. I think it's important with the big game Hunter here. I think that drawing the cards is probably more important though. Again, he wants to fish for, Savage Roar. If I know he has Force Nature Savage Roar in here. I'm curious if he's playing 1 or 2 combos of it though.
Savjz was considering trading into the Sludge Belcher prematurely a bit.
There's a Shadow Flame. Oh, just like you said, it's 1 point out of range now. So even something like Mountain Giant Shadow Flame wouldn't clear the Shade at this point.
Yeah, just a bit too late, but Shadow Flame, it's not too bad here, but the Shade will grow into 10/10 next turn. Like, could we see this be a game where actually the Shade just grows so large that it just hits the
One-shots.
opponent. Yeah, one shot the opponent.
I mean, it's possible. Turn 1 shade makes games. It puts a clock on the game. It's like one of us is going to die. Either I'm going to die because this shade is worthless in its size, or you're going to die because the shade got too large.
You know, Lifecoach could also be thinking of that he could possibly draw Sylvanas, and if he draws Sylvanas, then he would probably want to save the Shadow Flame, right?
No, Sylvanas got dealt with early.
Oh,
Remember,
it got silenced.
Yeah, it got Keeper early on.
So that's not even a possible play.
Right. Like, I think Lotheb Shadow Flame honestly isn't that bad to kind of, prevent yourself from getting combo. I think it's exactly what it's going to do too. Yeah, just the really good options. That shade is at least checked for now. It's not going to be able to just run over minions and get a ton of value. But again, the handlock doesn't have the reach it used to have, so this is just a really clean Cenarius or Dr. Boom turn. For Savjz, I think I'd like to see Cenarius.
Yeah, with Savjz, you've already seen one of the AoEs used by Lifecoach, and he's going to need a second one.
Yeah, second Hellfire.
Oh, that could be a good one.
That is a fantastic draw right now. He can run over these 2 2/2s, drop Ragnaros, and then all 3 of these targets are reasonable.
Yeah, Ragnaros, it's not a card we see in a lot of handlock decks because it gets countered by BGH so often, but it could just do so well here.
Now, here's the problem with this play, is that he is kind of making himself vulnerable to Force of Nature combos. If he chooses to taunt this, Savjz is going to have Mind Control tech and a big potential blowout, and I think that's what Lifecoach is thinking about, is if he wants to use his Sun Fury or not. With his position on the Ragnaros, I think he is going to Sun Fury. Oh, but did he spot it?
He's considering it. Savjz is hiding his face right now. This could be the turning point in the game if Lifecoach decides to Sun Fury.
Lifecoach is visibly worried. He's like, oh my gosh, if he has Mind Control tech, this is going to hurt so bad, but I need the extra taunt.
What's it going to be? Is Lifecoach just going to rope?
Wow.
Whoa.
That is some great intuition from Lifecoach. The shade gets taken out. Savage Roar gets drawn.
Yes, it's definitely a turning point in the game right now. A 10-5 shade being dealt with so easily by Ragnaros.
And no value gotten out of that. And I think this is going to be a Wrath and run over the token with this Cenarius.
You know, if Savjz actually plays 2 big game hunters, he could be trying to fish for it, because right now, if you leave a Ragnaros on the field, how are you going to win this game? He's either fishing for a big game hunter or something like Force of Nature right now.
Yeah, so it's going to be Dr. Boom. Actually, I like not wrathing here, and it's because the health on his Cenarius isn't really too terribly important, because if Ragnaros is going to hit Cenarius, he'd actually prefer it to be at a lower life total. So choosing to save the Wrath here to potentially clean up future board positions, I think makes a lot of sense.
Lifecoach has all the cards that he could want in the world now, though. And he has the 2 Mortal Coils, but last turn he decided to play around Mind Control tech. Does he do so again this turn? I think it's actually quite difficult to play around it now.
Yeah, it's definitely getting closer. He definitely wanted that Boombot to run into that 1/1, I think. So there's going to be the first Mortal Coil. He's trying to get this 1/1 down, I think. Doesn't get it. 4 points of damage on the Ragnaros.
That's so important. Now it's in swipe range, and Savjz can actually deal with it.
So this is going to be a big game hunter here. But yeah, it's getting harder and harder to play around Mind Control tech. I mean, this may be, one extra turn where he can do it, because he's not under threat of combo this turn.
Yeah, unfortunately, that 1/1 on the field from Lifecoach is actually kind of a bother for him.
Yeah, he needed a Boombot to actually hit that minion. That's crazy. How often do you want your minions to die to Boombot? You're like, please, 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 please kill my minions.
Yeah, please, Dr. Boom, be really imbalanced.
Oh my gosh. Lifecoach is going to try to set up against it. He wants to make a lot of these minions basically as worthless as possible with his Mind Control tech. And so 8 to the face. Savjz is going to suffer, but he's got chances for some blowouts here. Now, big question. How do you do this first? I think you got to make sure that you've planned this out correctly, because say like he does something like Hero Power, the 1/1, and then play Mind Control Tech. He's going to have 5 mana left after that.
I think you have to plan for the Mind Control Tech and for the swipe if you don't get Ragnaros.
Oh, that's a very good target right now to pick up, I think. Just having anything on the board that can help disrupt and keep your minions alive is a position he wants to be in. So this Sun Fury Protector not going to contest anything on the board right now. Swipe is going to take out Ragnaros, and Lifecoach is down to 16. And he's under threat of lethal again this turn.
Yeah, you know, before this Dr. Boom draw, Lifecoach was actually in not too great of a position. Like right now, he can play a Molten Giant, but Savjz just has a better hand. Then again, Savjz is, I didn't even notice this. He's at 10 HP right now.
Yeah, he has fallen pretty low because of everything that's gone on this game, and it feels to me like Molten Giant and Taunt 'em Ups is a good play. I mean, he's worried about combo, but I'm certain he's worried about Black Knight when he's seen Zombie Chow, he's seen Mind Control Tech, he hasn't seen Force of Nature or anything, he's seen Scenarios, he's seen Dr. Boom. I feel like that something like Black Knight is a legitimate threat in Lifecoach's mind. I don't think he has a way to play around it, though. I mean, it's more likely, I think, that Savjz has combo than he has Black Knight.
Yeah, certainly. Players are either running 1 or 2 copies of combo, and they're only running 1 copy of Black Knight, so you can't play around the legendary as much.
Savjz actually only has one way to basically live this turn. Yeah, I mean, he kind of has to do that.
Oh. Oh, man. So that means Lifecoach, he can't draw lethal now because nothing in his deck does that much damage, but it's looking so great for Lifecoach. He still kind of have to be worried about combo, but he does have the Defender of Argus if he wants to play it a bit slower.
Yeah, I'm curious. There's one way that actually traps him here, and if he plays Dr. Boom, and if he plays Dr. Boom, he's trapped, and if he doesn't kill the Ancient Allure. So if he plays Dr. Boom, I imagine this Molten Giant's going to run into Ancient Allure, but otherwise he would lose to something like exactly what Savjz has, which is Silence and Double Savage Roar. So you got to be careful to make sure he goes through every single option he can think about right now. I imagine it's going to be an anti-Keelbot and Defender of Argus turn.
Yeah, I think at this point, because your opponent is so low, you can play a little bit slower and just kind of guarantee the win.
It does not feel like it's been this long for this turn to be roping right now. It feels like this turn just started. Anti-Keelbot is what it's going to be. God, it's just excellent intuition from Lifecoach in this game.
And we're going to see
11 damage comes crashing in. Savjz is down to 5, and I don't know what draw he has to actually pull this game off, but this is going to have to be Savage Roars, I think, just to get the board clear.
So Drew the Claw plus Savage Roar doesn't even clear the board. He needs to essentially double Savage Roar to clear the board, and if he does that, there's only 4 mana left. I don't think Savjz can do it.
Yeah, it's actually looking like he doesn't live this turn at all. So, yeah, 2 Savage Roars, 4 mana left. Ancient Lore runs into the 8/8. His face runs into the 4/4. Yeah, that doesn't look like that's not an option right now.
You know, it all comes back to that turn where Ragnaros hit the shade, the 10-5 shade. It was just such a turnaround. Savjz invested an early Innervate and his shade and his turn 1 shade into that play, and Lifecoach just dealt with it with an 8/8 that even got even more value later on. Like, imagine if that shade had lived and Savjz had drawn the combo. That could just be instant death no matter what.
Yep.
We also see that Savjz hasn't drawn a Force of Nature yet, and that could be indicative of the fact that he only runs 1 combo.
Yeah, so we're going to try to live here, but I don't think it's going to work. Iron Begal is in the other hand, so that's pretty much going to do it. Lifecoach is going to take a 2-1 lead here. He's going to keep Ancient Allure, yeah, that's going to be the game. So Savjz scooping it up in Lifecoach. I think he's really happy to get through that match because that one was looking like it was in dire straits for a while. That Ragnaros really turned the game around. He found himself in a position where, you know, even if he didn't hit the shade, it really wasn't the worst situation in the world for him. Savjz would have had a very clean trade on Ragnaros, but sort of what Lifecoach was looking for was to get back to an even board position so that the game wouldn't kind of slip out of control. And Ragnaros, pretty much any of the targets that it hit were going to help accomplish that, and it just happened to be that he hit the best one.
Yeah, I think we have to give a lot of credit to Lifecoach actually for building his deck in a really intelligent way. He As we can see from his handlock deck, there doesn't appear to be Jiraxis, and Jiraxis is a card that's not that great in a lot of matchups that we currently see against Rogue, against Druid, or even against Mech Mage. These are very common decks right now that attempt to burst your opponent out of the game, and using 9 mana to get Jiraxis in the field puts you down to 15 HP and doesn't really develop the board very well, as opposed to a Ragnaros, which comes down on the board immediately and immediately has an effect. And in fact, killing something like a 10-5 Shade, I would say, is a pretty good effect. This Ragnaros gets back the board control, it gets back tempo, and it's pretty much exactly what Lifecoach needed to come back into the game.
Yep, so Lifecoach now going to have his Warlock and his Druid locked. He's got Mage and Paladin left to go up against Savjz, who's piloting Rogue, Druid, and Mage at this point. You know, I still got to feel like that, even though that Savjz is down a game, it feels like he's still got an advantage to me with Rogue, Druid. I'm sorry, with Druid and he's still got. No, he's got Warrior left. Oh my gosh, that makes all the difference in the world. Oh no, he does not have an advantage anymore. I was thinking he had Rogue and Druid and Mage left, not Druid, Mage, and Warrior left. Yeah, that's still gonna be tough. Warrior's gonna have to win a game versus Mage or versus Paladin, and he needs it to line up against Mage first.
I just also have to point out that throughout this entire tournament, Paladin actually has been the weakest class, sitting at an abysmal 22% win rate, and a lot of those losses did come from Lifecoach. Right now, Paladin is 2-7, which is just horrible right now. And the next worst class, I guess, would be Warrior, with actually a 43% win rate. So that's almost double the win rate of Paladin. So if Lifecoach falls, it might just because his Paladin isn't up to snuff.
It definitely could be the case. I mean, I think the high curve on it is really setting it back versus the matchups he expects to face, and that he hasn't been getting the right lineup for his Paladin. He wants to run it into these later game control decks. Game 4 is underway, and it's going to be Mech Mage for Lifecoach and Druid again for Savjz. But you know what? I like the way this Druid deck is built to handle something like Mech Mage. It's got Zombie Chow, it's got Mind Control Tech. It looks like Force of Nature is only a 1 copy of. So that's one of those cards where when you have 2 copies of it, you so very often have to use it as a removal effect from this position, but it looks like he's just going to have more utility available instead.
Mm-hmm. Both players' hands are looking fairly decent right now. Lifecoach does have the coin, and he does have a Mech Warper, but Savjz has the all-important Zombie Chow on turn 1 and a Wrath to take care of any Mech Warpers.
Yep. So Cogmaster, we saw Lifecoach actually throw away Cogmaster going second, and having seen Zombie Chow, I would tend to agree with that play.
Yeah, also it's the fact that he has a Mech Warper, so I think he's going to be looking for some great Mech Warper turns, just getting as many low-cost mechs as possible.
Yeah, doesn't want to coin it out here. It's threatened directly by Zombie Chow and Hero Power. Smart to keep it hidden. This is going to be the turn, though, so it's this and then the Noyatron.
Yeah, unfortunately, Savjz has the perfect answer in the Wrath.
Yep.
And he's still going to have board control at the end of the turn.
So still looking good for Savjz here. That Mech Yeti is going to be stuck in hand for an extra turn. His pan out is not too great, though. I mean, he's picked up Azure Drake, Harrison Jones, and Scenario so far, so actually no action following on turn 4 yet. I mean, this might have to just be like a big Game Hunter on turn 4 to keep the board stabilized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, big Game Hunter. I guess it's not too bad considering Lifecoach's hand, though. Lifecoach doesn't have anything like a Frostbolt, so he actually can't contest the big Game Hunter that much.
Savjz is actually, he's going to throw caution to the wind here, and I think this is because his turn 4 is looking so poor. He's just going to give up the Zombie Chow. I'm sorry, he's going to give up the Mech Warper turn. So fortunately for him, Lifecoach doesn't have a ton of action, though. It's going to be Mech Yeti, which is going to apply a lot of pressure, but there is some answers available. So potentially something like Swipe. Not the worst pickup in the world.
I think Lifecoach is considering just going for face right now. He's probably thinking his opponent doesn't have a Wrath, so he might as well make this trade.
Yep, Druid of the Claw gets picked up. So still little action here for Savjz. Gosh, I think I would have liked to see him Wrath last turn.
Yeah, Wrath comes down this turn, and we're going to see Lifecoach keep developing the board. Fortunately, his hand isn't too great right now. All he can play is an Noatron and Cogmaster. Let's see what he draws. Oh, that's perfect. Yeah,
not only is that perfect because it fills out his curve, but it's also perfect because the spare parts for Archmage, which he's already got in his hand. So every single one of those is going to matter as it looms closer to the end game.
Yeah, Lifecoach already has his 2 endgame cards, and he's going to curve out perfectly on turn 4. So he's going to be looking to draw some great stuff on turn 5 and 6. And I think that's just going to be the turning point, or the point where Savjz has the potential to stabilize. If he can get a really good stabilization on turns 5 and 6, where Lifecoach doesn't draw his curved out minions, then he could come back into the game. But if it's somewhat of an even board going into turn 7 for Lifecoach, then Dr. Boom and Archmage Antonides might just blow Savjz out.
Yeah. Savjz has been very mindful to hold on to this big game hunter too. He knows that Dr. Boom's going to be in this list, and it's probably going to be one of the ways that it actually slips away from him. So that ping actually puts a lot of pressure on what's going on further in this turn. And it's because he doesn't have a lot of action. Lifecoach is actually preparing for having not drawn the best minions on curve, and I think that's probably a better option for him, given his hand context. Because he's got Archmage Antonidas and because he's got Dr. Boom, it makes all the sense in the world that he's just setting up to be able to power through to those big plays.
Yeah, this play also denies swipe as a potential play for Savjz. You don't really want to swipe this board, and if Savjz even uses swipe right here, which he doesn't have, of course, then Lifecoach will be able to spam the board with his low-cost minions like the Cogmaster and Clockwork Gnome.
Yeah, but do you think Savjz is fearing something like Fireball here with this Druid of the Claw? It feels like he's like pained to play it of us.
Yeah, the issue is if you don't, like, what else can you play besides Druid of the Claw, right? I think he might be considering charging it, but then you're just weak to Frostbolt.
I don't mind playing the Azure Drake here. I mean, that minion is going to also effectively have taunt. It's going to dig you an option deeper into your deck. But I think that saving Azure Drake for the potential of a turn 9 Azure Drake swipe is probably a little bit more important. Because again, if he gets to these late stages of the game and it's just going to be big minion trading, I think that Lifecoach's minions are efficient enough that he's going to see a lot of 1 health and 2 health minions on the board.
Yeah, Mad Scientist is drawn from Lifecoach, and I definitely think we'll be seeing that at least go onto the board. Judging from Lifecoach's previous play, I think he's definitely going to also weave a ping in here. But if he wants to get past this Druid of the Claw, he's going to have to ram everything into it. And that leaves the... not only does he have to run everything into it, he has to ping the Druid of the Claw. And that leaves the Zombie Chow still alive. And I think Druid of the Claw, playing Druid of the Claw last turn was... partially because he did want to protect his Zombie Chow.
Yep. There's the ping. Lifecoach up to 29 again, but I don't think the life totals are too relevant right now. Savjz just fighting for the board. Wow, no attack from Lifecoach. Ooh, there's a swipe. I think that Lifecoach is going to... this game might actually slip away from him right here. That was a really big pickup. This Druid of the Claw is going to be completely uncontested.
Yeah, Savjz, as we said, because Lifecoach's hand wasn't the greatest between turns 5 and 6, now Savjz has taken control of the board. That's a decent draw, but still, there's no way for Lifecoach to get rid of this Druid of the Claw.
The mirror entities, this is really going to be the biggest problem, I think, for Savjz this game, is how he gets through this mirror entity. And Zombie Chow is like, one of the reasons it's in here is to fight against mirror entity, I imagine. And that's not going to be an option anymore. So everything coming down for Lifecoach. His turn 7 is going to look extremely good. Wow, this might just be like a pass turn. You know what? With the emergency coolant, I don't think it's going to be. I think a minion's going to find its way onto the board.
Yeah, any minion you can put on the board, you can just immediately freeze. Or you even have the option of charging your Druid of the Claw into a minion. And that if it effectively gives your opponent a Druid of the Claw, but it's also like effectively a pass, right?
Yeah, especially when you couple that with the emergency coolant, I think so. He's got to be careful, though. I mean, trading... Does he want to attack a 2-1? Does he want to attack a 3-2? Like, both those attacks are actually pretty bad for Druid of the Claw. If he plays Druid of the Claw, I imagine he would just charge it into Druid of the Claw.
I really don't want to see Savjz get tempted into playing the BGH here, though. That would probably be the worst thing in the world.
Yep. So it looks like he's gonna trade first, which I kind of like. I like seeing what's gonna come out of this. Oh, that's a great minion for him.
Yeah, now he can just charge and then trade into the Clockwork Gnome.
He's got to make a decision quick, though. Azure Drake, you can see he's pained from it again. So Azure Drake's going to be what it is. And Hero Power on this Clockwork Gnome. So no mech's going to be on Lifecoach's side of the board until he plays this Dr. Boom. But this is looking like it's a rough turn. I mean, when Mirror Entity's getting a 4/4 basically from the Death Rattle of Mad Scientist, I mean, what more could you possibly ask for out of a card like that?
Oh, Fireball.
4, 5, 6, 7. That's 15 points of damage available this turn.
I have to think Dr. Boom will be coming down in this turn.
Yeah, I think so as well.
I don't think the Azure Drake, the spell power from the Azure Drake is too relevant. Swipe still does pretty much the equal amount of damage, whether there's an Azure Drake or not on the field. Plus, the Boom Bots will give the Cog Master an upgrade.
Yeah, I think if he plays Dr. Boom, let me ask you this. If he plays Dr. Boom, is he going all face or is he trading it all? Is he worried about mind control tech in any regards? Like, can any of those things change what's going on with his play this turn?
I don't really think you need to play around mind control tech because you have so much burn in your hand, you have so much damage on the field, and you have the Archmage Antonitis.
So there's Dr. Boom.
Plus the trades just aren't that great, I'd say. There's actually no way you can play around mind control tech at this point.
Well, I think playing around mind control tech would be trading this Azure Drake in and putting these other guys to face. That's what I think the playing around mind control tech is. So that way there's the least chance that it hits a relevant target. So here's the big game hunter turn that Savjz is looking for now. And I think he's going to follow that with Druid of the Claw.
I would also happen to think that he's probably going to want to innervate something as well. Probably his hero power. This innervate just isn't doing that well. Wow, freeze.
Oh, he's going to go for Cenarius this turn. This is actually like a really strong play because he's still going to be able to big game hunter next turn. And this is going to like loot. This like develops his board perfectly. Like now he's not weak to something like Fireball, whereas Druid of the Claw was extremely weak to something like Fireball. This board is actually fairly resilient now. This is kind of the swing he might have needed to have a chance to get back into this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that freezing, the freezing spare part was just so impactful. 1 mana in order to stop this Dr. Boom. He can even play the big game hunter on the next turn to effectively get rid of it, but it's just effectively a really nice tempo swing.
I still think Lifecoach's hand might be too powerful. The Archmage and the 2 spare parts might just be too much for Savjz to deal with in the end of it, but he's got a couple draws here, so if he draws something like Savage or Enforce Nature in consecutive turns, there's a chance I think he gets enough damage out of this.
Lifecoach hovering over the Fireball. I don't think that's going to be a Fireball to Cenarius. I think Lifecoach should... Oh, just with everything he has right now, he should be able to finish the game off fairly soon.
That was an extremely good boom bot for Savjz.
With the ping, that means that Archmage Antonitis won't be coming down. Archmage will definitely be used for its full value next turn, though.
So he's going to use the Fireball. And that's actually... I still don't think it's that bad. This boom bot really matters, though.
I think what Lifecoach is thinking at this point is, because you froze my Dr. Boom, that probably means you don't have a big game hunter. So
2/1 damage.
I can play it a little slower.
Wow, this may have been exactly what Savjz needed to get back into this now. He's at 13, and Archmage is gonna put some pressure on the board, but Savjz is just out of range of 2 fireballs right now.
He is, but how it's going to be actually fairly difficult for Savjz to deal with the Archmage in the following turn. I guess he has to like run both his minions in, and he definitely still needs some healing. So yeah, he's still on a clock. He needs to draw those Ancient of Lores really soon. And even if he draws them, Lifecoach can always top deck a Frostbolt. Yeah. This is actually looking fairly similar to a lot of Druid versus Mech Mage games we've seen. It's just about the Mech Mage kind of running out of steam soon, and it's all about top decking that last Fireball or Frostbolt.
It's got to be Archmage, right?
Yeah, no mechs on the field, so almost certainly Mech Mage. Lifecoach is also not seeing he's not seen a Black Knight from Savjz at all in the handlock game, so he can kind of even afford to play around that.
Oh, do you think he's going to taunt one of these Cogmasters to prevent 2 attacks from going into... Oh, geez, this could be really bad for Savjz. He has no real action in his hand to get past this 1/2 taunted Cogmaster.
Oh, he even switches.
Even that, yeah. Okay, suddenly this looks terrible for Savjz. I don't actually know what draw gets him out of this. It's not Dr. Boom.
Oh man,
You know, actually though, is that if he's gonna have to hero power this turn because he sees 2 fireballs in the opposing end of the board. So Dr. Boom's gonna come down. He's gonna clear both of these Cogmasters, I think. Or maybe that goes to face instead. I think this Druid of the Claw actually might go to face, and he hopes to draw Savage Roar. So 24, and then if this, say that only Druid of the Claw gets cleared this turn, that would be 10 damage from Savage Roar, plus 9, 10, 11 on the board, plus 1 from Hero Power.
oh man.
Oh, Savage Roar. Wow, this game is really down to the wire now. There's actually a potential lethal draw for Savjz next turn.
It's not Frostbolt coming from Lifecoach, so at least the game will go on.
Unless we're miscounting something grossly here. So he's got Fireball through to Druid of the Claw. And then he's got 6 points of damage to face, and then 6 more, and then 1 more. This may have to be like a clear from Lifecoach this turn.
I think this could actually just be a bluff from Savjz, so that the Archmage will actually have to clear something.
I don't really know if it's a bluff. I think this is really the only way he could actually win. So
but it also acts like a bluff at this point.
Right. It's definitely putting a lot of pressure on Lifecoach given the potential for Savjz's range. But I don't think this is really it's really all he could do to try to win this game. Yeah, so Boombot gonna get taken out. 3 to face. That's basically the damage that Savage Roar would have given him.
Oh
wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, a way now that Savjz could actually win this game if the last Boombot hits Archmage Antonidas, and then he's able to clear it off in some fashion by drawing something like a Swipe or a Wrath.
Well, he's going to take 5. Oh, he's going to clear this? He's not going to go 5 to face? Wow, so he had to play around Force Nature Savage Roar there. And Savjz would have drawn Savage Roar.
So now I think Savjz actually does have to Savage Roar. Unless he hopes for really lucky Boombots. He has to Savage Roar and run the Boombot into Archmage Antonidas.
He's going to clear this Cogmaster first, though. Yep. And then this Boombot has to hit Archmage for this game to go on. And he has to hit it for 2. This Boombot's so important.
No!
Oh, it goes to face. Savjz is going to drop this game as well. Lifecoach is going to take a 3-1 lead. So much pressure from Lifecoach towards the ends of the game. But wow, the last couple turns, each player had to navigate it so perfectly to have a chance to maximize their chance to stay into the game. I'm so surprised that after Archmage and 2 spare parts, with Savjz being at 13 plus hero power, I'm so surprised that he even had a chance to win that game. And then Lifecoach had to play it so carefully that it gave Savjz another chance to get back into it. Like how did we end up getting to that point? Because the early game was because the early game was so stunted from both players.
Yeah, Lifecoach, he had some decent early game draws, but he started off with 2 Annoyotrons, which are pretty much the least aggressive minions in the deck. This allowed Savjz to stabilize a bit, but when those big threats came down, like Dr. Boom and Archmage Antonidas, Savjz's board wasn't stabilized enough, I'd have to say. And I have to say that the turning point of that game was the Mirror Entity. When the Azure Drake came on the field, it gave his opponent also an Azure Drake, a 4/4 body. Savjz just couldn't deal with that swing as a Druid player because Druid minions are just so fair that they have to trade 1 for 1, or they don't have a quality consecrate basically.
Let me ask you this, because this is going to be a crazy question, but is there any chance Savjz could have held on to that Zombie Chow in hopes that he could counter something like Mad Scientist's Mirror Entity with the Zombie Chow instead?
Just looking back at it, I think the Zombie Chow on turn 1 did so much work that it was just justified in playing it. If he didn't have the Zombie Chow in those first few turns, then the Neurotron wouldn't have been contested. Lifecoach would have been free to play more minions instead of weaving in ping. So I still like the Zombie Chow play on turn 1 instead of saving it just for a potential Mirror Entity.
Yeah. I would tend to agree with you. I think the fact that it stunted so much development or potential development made such a big difference in the impact of the game also. But I'm curious the merits of holding. That's actually something I think I'm going to try next time I'm playing Zombie Chows and Druid versus Mecha Mage. So Savjz down 3 games to 1, and Lifecoach going to have to win 1 game of the next 3 with his last deck, which is Paladin. But like you said, Paladin's had the worst win rate of any deck in the tournament so far.
Yeah,
what are Savjz's chances now to win this series?
Yeah, I certainly think Savjz can do it, but just by the fact that he's running Warrior in his lineup puts a huge damper against his chances against Lifecoach.
Yeah, I would think
and
so.
I think the players were allowed to pick their final deck on the last day. So just knowing that Lifecoach was bringing a Paladin to the tournament, I think Savjz could have made a decision to bring another deck basically besides Warrior.
Yeah, I would agree with you. This opening hand for Savjz is ugly. You're going to see all 4 of these cards pitched. Wild Pyromancer is in Lifecoach's deck. You know, he was in a spot, I think, earlier in the tournament where Wild Pyromancer was his only out to draw, and we didn't know if it was in his deck or not. We said he needed Wild Pyromancer, I think. There was a spot where Wild Pyromancer was the only out available for someone.
Yeah, exactly.
Played. Actually, it's funny to me he actually has Wild Pyromancer in his deck. He could have drawn.
At that point, we had seen the Wild Pyromancer in a previous game, though.
Had we?
Yeah.
I feel like I don't remember that. Regardless of which, it makes a lot of sense in here because his Paladin deck isn't built like a lot of the ones you've been seeing lately with 2 copies of Knife Juggler and 2 copies of Zombie Chow. He's much higher on his curve than a typical Paladin deck is. So while that's happening, he's back up to 2 copies of Equality. That's another card that we saw trimmed out of a lot of these decks was one Equality because they just didn't need the board clear. Equality was a good tool to have, but you didn't have to have one. But with Lifecoach's deck, he's going to be basically forfeiting the early board so often that having Wild Pyromancer and Equality, and in addition to having Equality with Consecrate, makes a lot of sense in the world. And in the same vein, the Mind Control deck, he's just going to be losing the early board so often to try to scale into his mid game that it makes sense to have these big recovery turns.
Yeah. We talked a lot about how Savjz was really familiar with his opponent's deck of Handlock, and I believe Savjz will be also very familiar against this particular Paladin deck because this Paladin is actually an exact copy of a deck that Savjz used to use in tournaments such as the ESL Legendary Series or the Inven Invitational. Savjz actually took this deck from a player named Hotform, and he modified it a bit. Savjz was one of the first players to use 2 piloted Sky Golems in tournaments. He had the 1 Mind Control tech, the 1 Pyromancer. So Savjz will probably know this list card for card, and he will know the key cards in the deck, which are the Wild Pyromancer, the Mind Control tech, and the Mass Heals that are in the Paladin deck.
Yeah, without this Snow Chugger, I would think that this game is a pretty big advantage over to Lifecoach because of True Silver Champion, but Snow Chugger is going to shut off that possibility.
Oh, going to face. How much does that telegraph Mind Control tech?
It does telegraph Mind Control tech, but something else I think it telegraphs is Consecration. I think he's looking for Savjz to get really greedy here. And when your opponent's looking for you to get greedy, you certainly should have... It should kind of like pique your interest. This is happening.
Yeah, Savjz actually, he plays around the Mind Control tag at least. He saw a look of just great confusion on Savjz's face.
Yeah.
Why didn't he just trade there?
He has more than enough damage. He doesn't have to commit anything to the board. I mean, when your opponent's taking this much damage, but again, this is the Consecrate turn. It feels like for me, he was kind of looking for. I think I would have liked to see him actually play the Tinkertown Technician and run the Clockwork Gnome into one of these. You know, to get the added pressure he needed. And now he's lost his Snow Chugger too, which I think is an actually pretty big deal. Annoyatron gets picked up though, and that is a great counter to something like True Silver Champion.
Yeah, Annoyatron and Snow Chugger are 2 cards usually that are great against Warrior because it just denies all their weapons. But against Paladin, it's pretty great too. We do see a pretty great draw from Lifecoach though, which is the Muster for Battle. Muster for Battle plus piloted or plus Shield.
Plus Wild Pyromancer, yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. We could go with that route as well, of course.
You have 1 damage to everything on the board.
That's so great.
And he gets the Light's Justice.
You know what? Another great play would be the Sludge Belcher. It just prevents, contests everything that's on the board right now.
Yeah, I actually like Sludge Belcher a little bit more because of the Fear of Goblin Blast Mage. I think that's a card he wants to minimize the impact against.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. Goblin Blastmate is just the natural enemy of Muster for Battle, or just a lot of 1/1s in general.
Reporting for duty.
Wow, he's going to go for it. So I imagine it's going to be coupled with a shielded minibot.
Yep, there we go. With only 1 quartermaster in the list, Lifecoach doesn't really have too much of a hope of drawing it, and this is just the overall much safer play.
Yeah, Goblin Blastmate would have been a fantastic pickup here. Gonna go with Tinkertown Technician, pick up his spare part, weave in all the hero powers he can.
Yeah, if he plays the Spider Tank, which he undoubtedly now. Whoa. If he plays it now, then this will kind of just get wrecked by Mind Control Tech, unfortunately.
Yeah, this play, I think this is a little bit of an overextension. And I think he just realized that his attack was a mistake as well. You can see Savjz, he was visibly frustrated with his attack after that. He kind of knows he's running the Mind Control Tech at this point, too. Oh, jeez. I think this is the turnaround.
Yeah, I don't think he can do better than this right now for Mind Control Tech. Engaging TC1. Oh.
He does pick up the worst minion, though, so there is a little bit of relief. Savjz and Lifecoach, you can see he's upset with it. Dang it. I really wanted that 4/4.
Or that 3/4 mech.
You know, if he'd have picked up that mech warper, he could have tried his turn ult. So three of these targets were really good, and one of them was really bad. That's actually pretty bad luck. Oh,
yeah, now Savjz just needs his own Mind Control Tech, right?
Yeah, I think Savjz sees a lot of stuff here. He's fallen pretty far behind. You know, he does have a lot of damage swinging back, though. So maybe he doesn't need too much stuff going on. Wow, and then being able to taunt up this mad scientist.
Looks pretty good. Yeah, it's just the damage might get Lifecoach in the end. There is at least 1 Spurn in his hand. He might be too really scared of this Wild Pyromancer on the field, though. It's always very threatening when you're playing an aggro deck and there's a Wild Pyro on the field.
Yeah, I think at this point, though, he's got to throw caution to the wind. He doesn't really have the tools, I think, to fight through everything. I'd like to see him just put extra pressure and go for the dome. So
yeah, that's certainly one way that Savjz can win. Lifecoach, although he runs 2 anti-Keel bots in his deck, he still hasn't drawn either of them. So Savjz still has hope.
Yeah, I don't feel like trying to fight a card advantage battle is a winning cause right now.
Savjz fighting for his tournament life right now. And this could be the crucial turn that he needs.
Yeah, so there's that. Yep, even Whirling Blade, he's just going to go 8 to the dome. I have to agree with this. Fireball is going to be a lethal draw. Frostbolt's going to get him really close to a lethal draw. And then when you couple that with the fact there's going to be a Mirror Entity, Lay on Hands is 1 turn early right now. There's no heal other than True Silver Champion available. And if he plays True Silver Champion, he can't play a minion. And with the Mad Scientist on the board, it's hard enough to play a minion anyway. This is looking like a really tough spot.
What Lifecoach can do right now is trade everything, his entire board basically, into his opponent's side of the board. And even if he does that, I don't think there's any way to prevent lethal this turn.
From Fireball, anyway.
From Fireball, yeah. He needs like 1 more point of attack on the board right now to clear everything just with his board alone.
Yeah, so it's going to be Sludge Belcher. Oh, wait a minute. Hang on. That might have been out of order. Oh, no, he doesn't give him the Mirror Entity this way. Ah, okay. I was just assuming Mirror Entity was on the board for some reason. Every time I see Mad Scientist, I'm like, that means there's a Mirror Entity on the board. Not quite yet. So yeah, sequencing actually here was super important.
All right, he plays Sludge Belcher, which means he can't equip the True Silver Champion, so he'll definitively be at 9 HP in the next turn.
Beats has 2 outs for lethal this turn. There's the Mirror Entity getting summoned.
How great would you feel if no secret came on the board?
I think you'd feel pretty darn good. Just 2 Mirror Entities in opposing hand.
All right, this is the draw. No, not Fireball.
I still think he's in a pretty decent position, though. So there's a ping. Not going to swing with this Tinkertown, and I would agree with that. You know, we did see Lothar play Counterspell, and I'm curious if that ever is impacting the way Lifecoach feels about this Lay on Hands.
Yeah, especially since Lothar is Lifecoach's teammate, he has to know that counterspell is possibly an option. Oh man, we actually don't know the exact secret of Savjz right now, so there's like a very small chance that it could be counterspell, but I don't think Savjz is the type of player to go for those kind of mind games.
I'm pretty sure it's Mirror Entity. Savjz strikes me as like a power player. Like he likes the most powerful cards that have the biggest impact. He's not really looking to mind game his opponent quite as much as he is just going to hunt for lethals with very strong combinations of cards. So land hands going to take Lifecoach up to 17, and that actually, you could see Savjz was very visibly uncomfortable with that play.
Yeah, now Lifecoach just has a choice of minions to give to his opponent.
Picking up that Acolyte of Pain in the Aldor Peacekeeper is actually, I think, pretty important. Archmage Antonidas gets drawn, and that could start to turn things around as well. I mean, this is some significant pressure that's coming down this turn. I'm curious if you ever see Frostbolt here when he draws Archmage. If he didn't draw Archmage Antonidas, can you ever picture a Frostbolt coming out this turn to prevent something like True Silver Champion?
Oh man, I think at that point, if you're at this many cards in your deck, you have to be going for a Hail Mary. I think you have to save that Frostbolt. If you just use the Frostbolt this turn to freeze your opponent's face and do 3 damage, I don't think this is a winning. That is a winning.
So
play.
Even if he hadn't drawn Archmage, you think he should be relying on drawing Archmage?
Yeah, I think that's the only way he can win at this point.
I would agree. I wanted to know your opinion on the matter though, because I think it is a little bit tough. Because you're so tempted to. You're like, but True Silver Champion's so bad for me.
The funny thing is, if Archmage comes down, there's no way for Lifecoach to deal with it. So Savjz is still in the game right now.
Yeah, seeing how this panned out. I mean, there's really only one attack for the Shielded Minibot.
Move quickly.
And it's straightforward. Right in the Cloudmaster.
Right in the kisser.
Follow the
Yeah, I think we're gonna see the Aldor, possibly a True Silver.
Follow the rule.
So there's the Mirror Entity on the Aldor.
Job done.
There's the True Silver Champion. Takes out the mech. Oh, this is really smart, actually. This is going to keep his Shielded Minibot alive, too. Gets a token out of it as well. Yeah, but like you said, there's actually no way to answer this Archmage right now. And this is a really important turn. Lifecoach is frozen, too, so everything really, really on the line here. And I think Savjz is going to go for a full clear also. I think he's going to Frostbolt this Aldor Peacekeeper. I think he's going to run his 1-3 into the 2-1 and run his 3-3 into the 1-1 to make sure that equality has to be coupled with something else to deal this damage. This is going to be a Fireball pickup. He's just going to go for face, so...
Wow. You can see Lifecoach shaking his head. That's the exact card he didn't want.
You know what? That Fireball pickup, I'm sorry, that extra Frostbolt pickup actually changed the way he did this too. So now he didn't even really necessarily need to play around equality, because Lifecoach have to have like equality and heal because Savjz has 10 points of damage.
Wait, is this just over? There's no equality, no
there's no way for Lifecoach to actually stabilize against this. So Archmage Antonidas is just going to be the card that ends up winning Savjz the game. Archmage Antonidas, this is the second Mech Mage game in a row that it is completely carried.
Yeah, we've seen Archmage Antonidas in almost every Mech Mage that went to the late game so far. Savjz versus Tice, Navria versus Strifecrow, and now Savjz versus Lifecoach twice in the same series. Archmage Antonidas is just so powerful in Mech Mage, where you can get all these spare parts. And now we can see Savjz didn't even have any spare parts, but just by the fact that he had that Frostbolt and he drew Archmage Antonidas, it was exactly what he needed. And Lifecoach doesn't even try; he gives up the game.
Wow, that is unbelievable. Game 5 in the books. Savjz going to put another win on the board. And wow, good stuff. We're going to take this time to remind you guys that this is a charity event. And the benefit's going to be for Child's Play. And Child's Play is an organization that helps provide toys and games to children in hospitals who don't otherwise have access to them. So if you'd like to learn more about Child's Play, you can visit childsplaycharity.org. And if you'd like to make your contribution, we strongly encourage you to do so. Our goal for today was set at the $3,000 mark, and we've got 4 matches to do it. So you can make your contributions. You can follow links in the chat that are provided or links below the stream as well to make your donation there. A big thank you to everyone who's contributed to that so far. I can promise you it means a lot to someone.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what else it means a lot to? It means a lot to Savjz that he won that game and he's now back in it. And he has the confidence to move on and perhaps take the series by winning 2 games in a row and taking down the entirety of Team Nihilum if he does so.
Yeah, I think it's a really big sigh of relief for Savjz to not get 4-1 in this series also. He's still got the uphill battle, I think, with Warrior versus Paladin, but he does have his next match coming up. And it's going to have to be Druid. And I think that Druid is going to do all right versus this Paladin because the Paladin is so heavily weighted toward top end. And I think what's going to end up making the most difference is whether or not Aldor Peacekeepers get drawn to stunt the early pressure from Savjz.
Yeah, it's all about whether the Paladin can stunt the growth of the walled growth of the innervates and just control the board, basically.
Druid versus Paladin, Game 6, Lifecoach versus Savjz. This is not a great opener for Savjz at the moment, but he's got 3 fresh cards to pick things up, and I'm curious how Lifecoach is going to end up mulliganing here because, again, I think that Aldor Peacekeeper is such an important card in this matchup that he may just want to fish for it. So we saw Lothar pitch back a Muster for Battle earlier in this tournament, and I think he had 2 of them in his opening hand and he pitched back 1. And I actually liked that he had pitched it back in hindsight because it gave him more access to Aldor Peacekeeper. Lifecoach is going to hang on to Piloted Shredder and Acolyte of Pain, though. So Wild Growth available for Savjz's turn.
Yeah, always what you want to see.
And there was the Aldor Peacekeeper right on draw 1 as well. So going to be able to contest this Piloted Shredder. There's a quality to contest future Shadow Next Ramus.
Now, we saw Lifecoach actually keep the Piloted Shredder, so he really wants the turn 4 play. But the problem with this Muster for Battle play is that undoubtedly the Acolyte of Pain will come on turn 3, and Savjz will have a really good response and swipe exactly when he needs to.
You know, because Lifecoach had this Acolyte of Pain and Aldor Peacekeeper, I think I actually would have liked to see him play Acolyte of Pain, Aldor Peacekeeper, whatever threat that Savjz played, and then start running his Acolyte of Pain into that to pick up card advantage.
Yeah, I like that as well.
Because in this position, he's got Aldor Peacekeeper to take care of this Piloted Shredder, but now the Piloted Shredder is going to help keep these tokens under control.
Lifecoach, he might even be considering just running his tokens in just to prevent something like a swipe. Just a few options here. The Pilot Shredder is fairly threatening though for a turn 4 play. Before attack, you're not going to get like too much more Aldor value. Of course, there are 5 attack minions in the Druid deck, but 4 and 5, not the biggest difference in the world. And you really want to get the Aldors off on the earlier creatures because they can potentially do more recursive damage.
Yep. You're going to have more time to contest what's going on later in the game. Hopefully by that point you have board control. Both players' goals fighting towards it. So Aldor Peacekeeper is going to be the play here. So if he's going to play Aldor on this turn 4 again, I think I would like to see him play Acolyte. So he's going to favor pressure here instead. There is, I think, a lot of merit, though, to using Muster for Battle here because it's going to help him couple with that equality. It's going to help him really fight off any explosive turns. Swipe's just going to be taking this out, and Zombie Chow.
Yeah, just a perfect draw.
Yeah, so not a lot, not any really real pressure from Savjz, but he's trying to establish board control at this point. And with something like Sylvanas, Wild Pyromancer gets drawn, so the equality, look out for that later in the game. Savjz is going to have to be careful to not overcommit to his board. I'm curious if that's something he's really thinking about against Paladin, though, especially with the way they've been played lately, because has he seen this Wild Pyromancer yet? Oh, he saw it last game. It was played on the board, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, he's definitely... I've talked to him about this tournament. He's definitely watched all the games, so he knows pretty much exactly what everyone is playing. And also, he knows this deck very well because he's played it in previous tournaments. So he will definitely be considering the Wild Pyromancer. But does he play around it? I don't know, because the Wild Pyromancer is probably a one-of, and sometimes you just can't afford to play around one-of cards.
Yeah, like the threat of Wild Pyromancer oftentimes means more than the actual Wild Pyromancer itself. It's from the player who has to play against its perspective. Because they always have to keep it in mind, like, if I overcommit and cancel this turn, am I going to lose the game? So it changes the way that he approaches everything. So Coach is going to keep getting his pokes in here. And I imagine this Piloted Shredder is going to get traded away.
I have no time for games.
A Wrath. I guess that doesn't change things when you have Sylvanas on board.
You know what? With that Shredder coming out first, before the Sylvanas would actually steal the minion that Piloted Shredder summons if it traded into it. So I actually like the fact that he's just playing Sylvanas here and going for face.
Yeah, even though you can potentially equality consecrate, it essentially gives your opponent 2 of those minions, 2 of whatever drops from both piloted shredders. So after that, Lifecoach will still be under a lot of pressure if, again, the quality consecrate, quality wild pyromancer play comes down, and he'll be getting a lot of, again, recursive damage from whatever drops from that. And if there's something like 2 Millhouse Mana Storms, for example, the game can just be over. Lifecoach also only has 1 board clear. Yeah, well, 2 Millhouse Mana Storms.
I'm sorry, come on.
So someone, I can dream, can I?
That's a big dream.
Mhm.
Continue what you were saying.
Yeah, but besides that 1 board clear, if he chooses to expend his Wild Pyromancer equality now, he doesn't have a lot of very strong plays. And he eventually will have to deal with the Sylvanas.
So it's going to be Acolyte of Pain first, and then Shield of Minion. This means he's probably going to be ignoring Sylvanas' turn. But where does he favor this damage? We've seen Lifecoach be very aggressive, but I don't think this is a spot where he can afford to do so.
Yeah, certainly not. Oh, 2 rats. That's actually not a bad draw.
Yeah, these are going to get cycled for sure.
Lifecoach is still kind of stabilizing, but he's eventually going to run out of cards, especially because the Acolyte of Pain will certainly only draw 1 card. Savjz is kind of in a similar situation. He does have double Wrath for cycle, but he also needs to draw his Ancient Allures fairly soon.
You know what I wouldn't mind seeing is for him to run the Sylvanas in the Pilot Shredder and take a look at what pops out of it, and then consider wrathing his own Sylvanas for 1. Because if he got a steal, like say on Acolyte, he could wrath his own Acolyte for 1 at that point, and keep picking up cards. And since this has really turned into a card advantage battle more than just about anything else, to me it makes a lot of sense that you could consider fighting it that way. Now that being said, there is a lot of value in Sylvanas just being on the board and contesting what's going on. So he's probably going to run it into Acolyte of Pain instead and move forward with the game from there. Picks up Dr. Boom. Both those cycles pretty important. The Wild Growth, effectively a dead draw for now. And again, really not concerned with life totals. This is going to be a big card advantage battle. Ironbeak Owl gets picked up, and that's pretty timely. And you can see that Savjz doesn't want to play this Shade and Extramus right now because he's worried about Consecrate.
Oh, man. Yeah, if you play, he doesn't. I guess he's looking for a turn where Consecrate is just really awkward for Lifecoach to use, or he's looking for that first Consecrate to be used.
Yeah.
But Savjz, he's actually shaking his head with that play right now.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this because at this point, it's just Sylvanas is directly contested with what's on the board. He doesn't really get any value from it. He gets the board cleared, but he doesn't actually gain anything, and I think that's what he was looking for.
Yeah, all the minions will be going into Sylvanas right now, and Lifecoach isn't too sad about taking 5 to the face because he's getting additional armor anyway.
Should he be attacking first and then getting the armor? Does that matter at all in this matchup? Like he'd be down to 24 instead, so if he has to lay on hands, he'd pick up a couple extra points of life. Yeah. I don't think it's that big of a deal though, because this game, again, I feel like the damage is relatively inconsequential because it's such a big card advantage fight that these players are going through.
Yeah, if Savjz didn't play his Shade of Naxxramas last turn, he's certainly not going to play it at this turn, especially because anything like any combo with equality would clear the entire board.
Yeah,
I do think this is an equality turn though.
Yeah, Innervate was one of the worst draws, also in Savjz's deck at this point. Really needs something like Cenarius, Ancient Allure. He needs this top end.
Yeah, he needs more cards basically.
Yeah, at this point, I feel like when it gets to this point in the game, it's going to favor Lifecoach more often. He's pretty much at a stabilized life total. He's got access to his big drops coming in later in the game. He's got equality combo, and he's got anti-Keelbot to keep himself out of range of combo.
Yeah, he has all the tools that he needs, and Savjz has none. This should be an equality turn, right? What else can you see?
Well, I still think there's a chance that he just continues to fight the good fight and just plays Piloted Sky Golem. And is kind of okay with the fact that Dr. Boom's going to get in some value.
How worried are you about any Savage Roar combos, though?
That's a good question. So if he's worried about Savage Roar, you definitely will see equality this turn. Yep, you're going to see it. So there's going to be Consecrate. And no further development, though, so these Boombots, pretty important how they land.
The best would be something like 1 to Sludge Belcher and 4 to face. Oh, well, that's even better. Yeah, right?
How about 4 to Sludge Belcher and 4 to face? Effectively the same thing. Any 1 to Sludge Belcher is going to be the 1. So this is going to be Shade and Extramus' turn. Gosh, Keeper is a decent draw right now, but not for the right reasons. He's gonna need that tool eventually, but I think he would have liked to see something else instead. I want to see him hold on to this keeper as well. Again, he's fighting a card advantage battle, so he needs every single tool that he can get access to.
Yeah, I agree. The keeper, normally you can get it on the board to threaten some kind of lethal, but Savjz certainly doesn't have those cards right now. And if he threatens the lethal, then Lifecoach might not even be able to do anything about it anyway. So it's just a useless keeper that will get traded into with the piloted Sky Golem. But now, because keeper is saved, the keeper will get some value by silencing this golem.
Yep, so first order business. Let's see what this Wild Growth fetches. Again, just so many dead cards. Savjz. There's a Druid of the Claw.
It's not terrible.
Excess mana doesn't want to go away. He's like, no, keep me around.
Yeah, that would be pretty imbalanced though. 0 mana card that keeps drawing cards and doesn't go away.
Just
cycle through your whole deck.
Savjz can actually choose to play nothing here. And I think his intention is to trade this Shade into the Pilot Sky Golem next turn with Keeper of the Grove.
Yeah, almost certainly.
Yep. And Lifecoach, not really a lot of action going on here either. So it's probably just good. You're probably going to see anti-Keelbot and Hero Power.
Yeah, he does have the second board clear though, with his second equality. So that's kind of his get out of jail free panic button. Again, Savjz does need his top end again, especially the Ancient of Lores.
Yeah, both of these players need their top end right now. I mean, Lifecoach he drew a Pilot Sky Golem, but he's not drawing like a Kel'Thuzad. He hasn't drawn Tyrion. He hasn't drawn his Dr. Boom. He's drawing his utility cards as well. So both these players really trading all their utility back and forth. So I feel like the first big draw is going to be the biggest swing in the game you see.
Lifecoach, I think he is somewhat considering just equipping the True Silver, but he's seen so many cards that Savjz has been holding on to right now, and he has to think at least one of them could be Harrison Jones.
He's seen Harrison Jones at this point too, right?
Yeah, he's definitely seen Harrison Jones in this deck.
Yep.
And wow, playing around mind control tech.
Wow. Some impressive stuff. So not going to draw a card first, which I'm a little bit surprised by. From the Azure Drake. I mean, I gotta believe he wants to Azure Drake first. Okay, there we go. Oh gosh, that's kind of the other worst draw in his deck at this point.
You know, sometimes your 2 Ancients of Lore are just on the bottom of your deck. Yep. Which actually, like, Savjz actually mulled away his 2 Ancients of Lore in his opening hand, so I don't think he's regretting it, because that is the correct decision, but yeah. I guess that really feels bad.
Yeah, I don't think he's regretting it at all either. I feel like it's just kind of the play you gotta make. Now, I'm curious if, okay, so he's going to trade the Shade in. I was wondering if he was going to charge this Druid of the Claw and try to keep his Shade around. So he's going to use both of his Innervates now. They're pretty much have been useless draws. Oh, he's actually not going to use both of his Innervates. He's going to continue to fight a major card advantage battle here, making sure that every single token is taken care of every turn. Oh, there's Lay on Hands. No life value from it, but 3 cards, pretty important. But I think that True Silver Champion is going to be a little bit more important this turn again. He's just trying to keep everything under control.
Yeah, True Silver would be a pretty good play right now. It's pretty much the most value you can get out of True Silver. There's 2 4 health minions on board, so even though he floats some mana, I think it's still all right.
Yeah, being at 28 is about the only time you can get more value. True Silver Champion.
Lifecoach might be thinking, though, that because he has equality in his hand, he can just go for the Lay on Hands now and equality whatever comes onto the board on the next turn.
You have to consider what the message that sends to your opponent, though. So if he chooses to Lay on Hands now, there's a higher likelihood that he's drawn the other equality at this point. So Savjz is going to be aware of that. And if he sends that message to a player like Savjz, he's going to pick up on that. He's not just going to be, oh, well, he Lay on Hands. Now's the time to strike because he didn't develop anything. There's Ancient of Lore. That's exactly what he was looking for. So both of these players picking up card draw effects, but Savjz getting to activate his first. There's a Cenarius. And you may have just seen this game turn around. I think this is almost certainly going to be an equality turn.
Yeah, Force of Nature Savjz is lethal here, so unfortunately, Lay on Hands was not used on last turn, and it probably won't be this turn. And we're gonna have to. It might just go into a cycle where the Druid just pressures so much on every single turn that Lay on Hands will never be used. And the other thing is that if Lifecoach equalities now, then both equalities have been used. So Savjz will not be afraid of Voyage of just loading up his board with whatever, and Lifecoach would be hard pressed to stop that.
Yep. Savjz was so tempted to use that key for the Grove on the 1-2, and I'm so glad that he ended up holding it. And Lifecoach just, oh gosh, it's such a gross turn for him. Again, just like you said, it's not the fact that equality isn't getting enough value here, it's that it kind of opens the floodgate.
There's also a possibility of just using lay on hands and equality right now. It would clear up a lot of the board, get you out of Force of Nature Savage Roar range, and at the same time you draw cards.
Yeah, if he's going to attack this, he's definitely not using his equality this turn. I think he wants one more big turn in development.
I think he's gonna draw first. He might still is equality, or rather is Force of Nature Savage Roar lethal now?
It's gonna be
14
22.
plus.
No, it's only gonna be, it's 26 damage with Force of Nature Savage Roar right now.
Okay, this is fine then.
Yeah, so out of range of that. So I imagine this is gonna get charged if it's played. Yep. So making sure he's going to have to... He's not only hedging his bets versus equality there, but he's also making sure that if his opponent uses equality, he can't just run minions in and have like weird damage effects that can do something.
Yeah, attacking with the Shade also hedges against equality.
Yeah, so this is... I mean, this has to be an equality turn. And this is so good for him that he has the Wild Power Mints instead of Consecrate, because it means he gets to play Sludge Belcher along with it.
And again, it looks really in favor of Lifecoach right now. With the Sludge Belcher on board, Savjz will still be able to play a Scenarios, but Lifecoach has just all the minions that he could want behind that,
Yep.
with the Kel'Thuzad and the Dr. Boom.
Yep, so Scenarios is coming down here. And Savjz really needs Lifecoach to overcommit to the board at this point. This Mind Control tech needs to get value. He's running out of any viable tools.
I do think that there's a very high possibility that Lifecoach will overcommit just by playing the Dr. Boom onto this board.
Yep. Kel'Thuzad's not a bad job either, though. He's seen a Keeper of the Grove. It's out of BGH range. I don't think he's really worried about Force Nature Savage or too terribly much. 14. Actually, it's a lot of damage right now, so maybe he is. Go down to 3, 4, 2, 8, 12, 17. It'd be 19 damage with Force Nature Savage Roar after running over the Sludge Belcher. So maybe Kel'Thuzad is going to be the job. Because if you get Force Nature Savage Roar out of your opponent and they have to just kill your Kel'Thuzad from it, I think you're okay with that.
Yeah, then you can play just a much longer game against your opponent. But if Dr. Boom comes on the board instead, it would just be a huge swing. Mind Control tech, if you don't steal the Dr. Boom, then you just play BGH.
So we shielded Minibot, and oh, he's gonna go for it. Dr. Boom's gonna come down. Oh,
Is it?
Maybe not. He reached for Dr. Boom. He's gonna be Kel'Thuzad instead. So very diligent not to overcommit to anything. And oh gosh, Savjz does not get the draw he needs. That Harrison Jones is way late in the game right now.
Is there a way to clear this Dr. Boom? I don't believe so.
There's not a way to clear it right now.
He's missing 1 damage.
Yep. I think this Harrison Jones is going to get dropped. I think he just needs something on the board.
Yeah, he's already seen double equality, so he might just need something to Savage Roar with on the next turn.
I'm just going to be Sludge Belcher Hero Power. Harrison Jones gets drawn for Lifecoach. That's a dead draw right now. Is this actually... This is 1 damage off lethal right now. Wow, it's fun. If he had made a token last turn, he actually would have lethal this turn.
Let me think.
Well, no, he couldn't have made a token because
No,
he played.
yeah, you're right.
Yeah. But here's the conundrum that Lifecoach is under right now. He's played around Mind Control tech last turn, but it's really hard to play around it this turn right now.
I'm curious if there's just enough pressure, though, to negate that, because he has so much damage to face. Like, if he silences the Sludge Belcher, he's got 9 damage on face right now, and that drops Savjz to 1.
Must move quickly.
Lifecoach, though, I'm not sure if he's the type of player who is able to turn on the aggression. He seems more of like the kind of guy who just goes more defensive all the time, and I think we're going to see yet another defensive play. Now, if Mind Control tech comes down, And we see him steal the Kel'Thuzad. Again, it could be another turn of the game where Lifecoach has used both equalities, and he can't really deal with a Kel'Thuzad.
Wow, this is a big turn now. This mind control tech's going to need to do some work. Keeper of the Grove gets picked up. I don't know if this is enough. I mean, he needs a major steal here. So he has to figure out how the sequencing is going to work now. Because he doesn't have like too many super relevant plays. So you actually might see a Savjz Roar here just to make sure that he gets everything in as efficiently as possible.
Mm-hmm. He could trade up to he could trade off the Sludge Belcher and the slime and the resulting slime from the first Sludge Belcher. So he could make it a 1 in 4 for the mind control tech.
He's going for the 1 in 5 instead, though. So here we go. This mind control tech's so important. Oh, it gets anti-Keelbot. bot. So it's going to be silence onto this Sludge Belcher, and then you're going to see Cenarius run into Kel'Thuzad at this point.
Time waits for no one.
Yeah, I think that has to be it. He can clear up most of the board, actually, so it's not too bad, actually. Again, Lifecoach, no third equality in his deck. He's not cheating. He's not playing Arena.
If Savjz does this, he's going to kill himself. Okay. Oh my gosh, does he have time to complete all this?
I'm sure it's just a spectator mode thing.
There's the Cenarius attack. There's that attack. True Silver
it's over.
And that's going to end the game. Wow.
That was such a tense game right there.
Fighting as hard as he can, but Paladin just having so much pressure through the mid game and enough card draw to find the answers it needs to take out Savjz. And Lifecoach is going to move on 4 games to 2 in our first match of the day.